Hi, this is Bhartia and welcome to next episode of Open for Business. In the previous episode, we talked about how to get started with a new business. Now we have a plan and we also have funding. So the next step is to start building your organization, start investing in people. Blair, once you have all this vision in place, you have funding in place for your business, you have to, or you may not have to build your team. But the question is, do you really need a team? And where does it fall in terms of priorities?
Great to be here, Swap. Yeah, first off, let's review keys to any successful startup. So number one, product market fit, of course. Number two is team. And number three is strategy. So when you're building a brick and mortar business, you often hear this like, hey, it's all about location, location, location. And when it comes to open source startups, investors and successful entrepreneurs agree it's all about team, team, team. When you think about it, a founder and CEO has really three core responsibilities. Number one, recruit and retain a great team. Absolutely fundamental. Number two, build and evolve that long-term strategy and communicate it internally and externally. And finally, make sure the company doesn't run out of money. It always reminds me of growing up, my dad always would tell me that he'd be totally fine with a manager who slept in their office all day, as long as they were great at hiring and retaining a high-performing team. Now, he was exaggerating, of course, but you need to make building your team a priority as fundamental as building your product.
So, well, the mandate is that, building your team is important, if not critical to your success. But, the team itself, it comprises of, individuals. So what kind of talent, individuals, team member you need?
Sure. Well, first, let's talk about what we mean by team. In the past, building a team typically referred to full-time employees or W-2 employees. Increasingly, though, startups are leveraging 1099 independent contractors, such as on-demand specialists and freelancers and consultants, versus permanent hires. Now, there are pros and cons to both, but the goal is still to build the right team at the right time in order to help you be successful while controlling costs. The questions to ask yourself when looking for full-time or contractor roles are: match your team's design to your business goals. Secondly, hire for what you need now, not for what's on some org chart somewhere. Go strategic, but make sure it's hands-on. You got to remember that these people are going to be very entrepreneurial, and they're going to have to be able to not only think big and be okay with lots of change and also small amounts of information to make decisions on, but they need to be hands-on as well. Also, be flexible to global talent, not just local. I personally prefer a face-to-face work environment, but COVID has accelerated the acceptance of virtualized teams. So even after the pandemic, you will need to embrace remote workers. So don't let location prevent you from recruiting the best possible talent. Okay, the number one key ingredient to great teams comes down to, in my opinion, trust. When trust is low, your business agility goes down. Startups need to pivot all the time and make quick decisions. If you don't have trust across your team, then your success rate will fundamentally suffer. This typically manifests itself in team members who can't admit to making mistakes or demonstrate vulnerability. Keep an eye out for personalities like this in the hiring process, and make sure any hire can definitely demonstrate past success building trust with others. There's this great book by Patrick Lencioni called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which highlights additional attributes to watch out for, including like fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. But all of these are underpinned by a fundamental lack of trust.
Right now, since we're talking about hiring, like when you hire, first impression may not be the last impression. Getting somebody in the first interview or process. As you mentioned, there should be team member. There are so many key components, ingredients needed to be a successful team member. So if you're a startup leader, what should you keep in mind during the recruiting process itself when you're vetting or evaluating the candidates?
Let's break down what you need to know to attract and hire your superstar team. So first, understand there is a talent war going on right now. There is a shortage of what I like to call these purple unicorns, these experienced, entrepreneurial, strategic, and addicted workers who are at the right stage in their career to jump into your startup. So you gotta get competitive and you gotta be aggressive for talent. Secondly, keep in mind that the best employees don't want to be micromanaged. Be prepared to give up control. I mean, it's tough for entrepreneurs and founders to give up control early on in their business, but you're gonna have to if you're gonna embrace this kind of talent. So if you wanna have high performing team members, you gotta be able to give up some control. Additionally, when the company wins, they win. Accept that you will need to give up equity if you're going to attract and retain top performers. You should typically set aside 20% of your cap table for an employee pool, then be prepared to refresh it with each funding round so that you maintain at least a 10% ungranted kind of pool for future hires. So depending on stage, evaluation, the role you're hiring for, and experience of the person you want to bring on, you could be looking at anywhere from 0.25% to 2 to 5% of the business for major positions like a CFO or a CTO. Additionally, try and avoid hiring friends. But if you do, make sure you set expectations at the start. Things may not work out. And after all, it's really just business, not personal. Another one is don't overthink it. Inaction is often worse than a bad hire. I've seen this so many times. The real danger is not accepting that you made a mistake, and even worse, not doing something about it. If it's not a fit, you aren't doing yourself, your company, or the individual any good by keeping them on longer than you should. Be decisive with your hiring, as well as when it's time to let someone go. Keep in mind that the earlier stage your company is, the more entrepreneurial team members need to be. If your early stage sales leader is talking about like all of the sales support and the complex systems they need to sell something, then you're definitely looking at the wrong person for the stage you're in. Early stage sales leaders that I've worked with thrive on selling on vision and are totally comfortable, selling off a napkin and don't ask for like the next marketing presentation deck or expensive sales tools. Make sure your candidates present to you. I've seen this happen so many times. Like you go and interview somebody, you maybe do a lot of one-on-ones, and you get really excited about this person, but make sure they actually deliver a presentation to you. Never hire anyone who can't deliver a 30-minute presentation to you and the other team members. If you want to see how they organize and communicate an idea along with how they field questions. So it's really important to kind of see them demonstrate that. I typically have late stage candidates present on a topic they're already familiar with, like their current company or a hobby. Now, if this is a C-level person that you're late stage with, it's also totally okay to ask them to do a 30, 60, 90-day plan and present that. Finally, I would say, run talent acquisition like you would run customer relationship marketing. Every touch point you have with the candidate can lead you to the other hidden candidates that could be your next superstar. So make any candidate interaction special and remarkable. It will pay dividends for sure.
I think those are some very good, kind of piece of advice that is there for budding entrepreneurs who are building their companies. And the companies, you may start up, but at one point you may become a mega corporation too. So thank you for sharing those, because once you understand these traits, it doesn't really matter how big or small your company is, to be honest. But before we wrap this up, any last bit of advice?
This is one thing I always talk to entrepreneurs about is, make sure you remember that your team will likely turn over 3 times on the way from startup to a real business of scale. So the scrappy startup team that helped you get going will not be the same team that helps you grow from, let's say, maybe the 50 to 300 employees. And the team that helped you during that hypergrowth period won't be the same that helps you dominate as a global enterprise. So just go in kind of eyes wide open that your team will potentially turn over multiple times during the maturity of your business.
Great. Thank you, Blair, for the insight there. And I'm really excited to talk to you for our new episode. Thank you.